a whisper of wind across the desert. A camel's hoof presses into sun-baked earth. Somewhere in the distance, a bell jingles. Dust rises. And with it, history. For thousands of years, caravans moved like arteries across Asia, linking cities, empires, and entire civilizations. They carried bolts of shimmering silk, bundles of fragrant spices, baskets of glass beads, secrets, stories, plagues, religions, technologies. This wasn't a road in the modern sense. No signs. No pavement, no single path. And yet, it changed the world more profoundly than any highway or railway ever built. They called it the Silk Road. But it was so much more than silk. It began in China during the Han Dynasty, around the 2nd century BCE. The Chinese had a secret, a fabric so fine, so smooth, so luminous it seemed almost alive. Silk, lightweight, luxurious, and impossible to replicate. They guarded the secret jealously, punishing anyone who dared reveal how silk was made. No one in the West knew it came from worms. For centuries, they thought it grew on trees. Merchants from the Roman Empire were desperate to get their hands on it. They didn't care where it came from, just that it shimmered in torchlight and wrapped around senators and emperors like flowing water. Silk became a currency of elegance, power, and status. So began the Great Exchange. Chinese silk moved westward, while gold, silver, glassware, and even horses flowed eastward. But silk was only the beginning. As caravans snaked their way from Xi'an to Samarkand, from Persia to the Levant, goods were just the surface-level cargo. Underneath were ideas, technologies, dreams. A Persian merchant might share tales of Zoroastrianism with a Buddhist monk. An Indian trader might offer cinnamon and walk away with astrological charts from Babylon. A Chinese scholar might acquire Roman glassware and wonder how it was shaped. Along the way, entire cities bloomed in the dust. Oasis towns like Kashgar and Bukhara transformed into bustling marketplaces and cultural melting pots. You could hear a dozen languages in a single street corner: Sogdian, Arabic, Chinese, Greek, Sanskrit. Cultures collided, intermarried, borrowed. One of the most dramatic transformations came in the form of religion. Buddhism traveled from India through Central Asia and into China, largely by way of the Silk Road. It didn't just cross borders, it evolved along the way. By the time it reached China, Buddhism had transformed into a distinctly East Asian version of itself. Layered with Chinese philosophy, aesthetics, and metaphors. Islam too spread through Silk Road cities, not through swords, but through merchants. Mosques appeared. Beside markets, Arabic script mingled with Uyghur and Chinese inscriptions. Christianity and Judaism traveled this route as well, creating pockets of faith in far-flung lands. But the Silk Road didn't just spread beliefs, it shaped science. Papermaking, a Chinese invention, made its way westward through this network. When the technique reached the Islamic world, scholars in Baghdad began translating ancient Greek and Indian texts onto paper. Philosophy, medicine, mathematics. Without the Silk Road, much of classical knowledge might have vanished. Eventually, this translated knowledge found its way into Europe, sparking the Renaissance centuries later. Gunpowder followed a similar route. So did the compass. Both would eventually tip the balance of global power, forever altering how wars were fought and how oceans were crossed. And then, of course, there was the shadow side. The Silk Road didn't only move riches and wisdom, it moved death. In the 14th century, merchant ships and caravan routes carried more than silk and pepper. They carried fleas. The Black Death, likely originating in Central Asia, spread through Silk Road towns before boarding ships to Europe. The result? One of the deadliest pandemics in human history, killing an estimated 75 to 200 million people. But even in the wake of catastrophe, the Silk Road persisted. Marco Polo famously journeyed from Venice to China. Along its routes in the 13th century, spending years in the court of Kublai Khan. His stories, whether fact or fiction, ignited the imagination of Europe. They inspired dreams of the East, of spices, palaces, riches. Eventually, those dreams pushed nations to seek sea routes eastward when land travel became too dangerous. That's the final irony. The Silk Road helped inspire the age of exploration, which would eventually eclipse it. By the 16th century, maritime empires were bypassing Central Asia altogether. The great caravans dwindled. Cities once vibrant with trade and chatter fell into silence. But the legacy never vanished. The Silk Road stitched the ancient world together. It taught humanity that distance could be bridged, not just by conquest, but by curiosity. It taught us that value wasn't only in gold, but in stories, inventions, flavors, and faiths. That the world, vast as it seemed, could be walked, step by step, trade by trade. Even today, echoes of the Silk Road remain. You can see them in the spread of noodles from China, to Italy, in Persian rugs in Istanbul markets, in Buddhist temples nestled in the mountains of Western China, in the DNA of Central Asian peoples, who carry the genes of both East and West. It was never just a road, it was a living, breathing artery of civilization. And in many ways, it still is.